This week, we're getting hot and sweaty for the sake of sustainability. How's it going? Thank you so much for hitting play on Earth Care, the podcast where we have climate-conscious conversations in a not-so-overwhelming way. I'm your host, Sarah Christie, and welcome to episode 4 of the Sustainability and the Live Music Industry series. Now, before I introduce you to this week's guest, I just want to extend the biggest thank you to you, whether you've listened before, whether this is your first time hitting play. I really do appreciate your time and that you're joining this conversation. SWG3 is a venue in Glasgow, Scotland that embodies the creative innovation that a green future calls for. In your conversations about sustainability, the phrase, use what you have, may have come up. This call to action is a big proponent of waste reduction because it isn't dependent on more, right? More extraction, more emissions, more waste, which, yeah, it can easily be put in motion on an individual level. You don't have food containers to store leftovers? Great, I'll just use old jars and old takeout containers that I have. Ran out of rags, no problem. I'll cut up an old t-shirt and turn that into rags. But what does that look like for a venue, though? Especially one of Scotland's busiest venues that welcomes 250,000 people year-round. In 2021, SWG3 began their substantial shift towards net zero. They began measuring the carbon footprint of their operation to better understand their environmental impact. With that, they developed a baseline that allows them to continuously move that sustainability needle. As a business, they want guests to keep dancing. They want to keep working and have made it their mission to operate in a responsible manner that recognizes the climate crisis. By 2022, SWG3 caught the world's attention by introducing a form of renewable energy that no other venue had tapped into. They started using the heat generated by all of the dancing fans. BODYHEAT. I remember reading about that here in Canada and A, being so jealous that it wasn't here, it was all the way in Scotland, and B, being so energized at the fun strides being made for the environment. BODYHEAT is just one of the items on the very long and growing list of systems in place that are getting SWG3 closer to net zero. I'm so thrilled to introduce you to Hannah George, Sustainability Coordinator at SWG3, who is here to break down how exactly BODYHEAT works, what other green practices are in place, and what's next for SWG3's sustainable journey. Here it is, episode 4 of the Sustainability and the Live Music Industry series on Earth Care with Hannah George. Hannah George, Sustainability Coordinator over at SWG3. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
I'm great. I'm, like I said, so excited, beyond excited to be talking with you right now. Can you tell me, as we get into it, just to kick it all off, the backstory on SWG3 deciding to kickstart the journey to going to net zero?
Back in 2021, SWG3 hosted the New York Times Climate Hub during COP26. So that was a really big turning point for us. We began to ask ourselves the question, are we doing enough for the environment? Yes, we're recycling. Yes, we're trying to be energy efficient, but is that enough? And I think the truth is we could always be doing more. So that's when we decided to start our journey to going net zero and just looking at all aspects of sustainability across the venue and across our events.
What is the capacity of the venue?
So we have 4 different venues within our venue. So the largest is around 1,500 and the smallest is around 125. So we can put on a huge kind of range of events, and there's a really big diversity in the kind of events that we get at the venue.
And a lot of potential for waste for a venue that size. That's a large number, right? So when you're thinking about this transition, I'm wondering, what were some of the roadblocks or the hurdles that you had to overcome to really start chipping away at this mission?
Yeah, I think anyone who's tried to implement change will probably agree that one of the biggest hurdles is behavior change. So it can be difficult to kind of get people on board with change, with sustainable change that's kind of different to business as usual or what they have expected when they've been to the venue before or other venues. So yeah, whether that's like a different recycling system or reusable cup system, it all kind of takes a level of communication. But I think there's definitely like a slow but certain change in people's attitudes towards environmental issues, and people are being more open to these changes as they become more common in other venues around the place as well. Definitely starting to see a shift in that.
Right. And communication plays such a major role. And you think about it for an event space, right? You have to be communicating with your entire team, but also the guests who are then coming and letting them know about all of the new projects you have in place, like BODYHEAT, which was implemented in 2022. Can you walk me through this technology? What is it? How does it work?
Yeah, definitely. BODYHEAT is a thermal heating and cooling system. Basically, it allows us to harness body heat from club and gig goers and guests attending our events. So essentially, the heat from our venues is transported using a carrier fluid through a closed network of pipes to heat pumps in a plant room. And then that heat is then stored 200 meters underground in our 12 boreholes. And then when that energy is ready to be used, it can travel back to the heat pumps where it's upgraded to a suitable temperature, and then it's emitted back into our spaces. So that was a very brief rundown, but I hope that makes sense.
Dancing is encouraged, sweaty is sustainable, the sweatier the better. Is that what you're saying here?
Definitely. Yeah, we kind of realized, anyone who's been to a club will know how hot it gets in there. So we just thought, let's see what we can do. How do we harness that? How do we use it?
I was laughing when I was doing some prep for this interview because I read that you often get asked, does it smell?
Yeah.
And does it?
No, it doesn't. So all we're capturing is the heat. We're not capturing the sweat or the smell or anything like that. So yeah, thankfully it doesn't smell.
How long did this take to install? Because this sounds like a major project.
Yeah, it was. So I wasn't actually here when BODYHEAT was being implemented, but as a rough timeline, I think it took around 2 years from kind of the initial idea to the installation. And this is very much a project that began during lockdown when the venue wasn't able to operate. So we were thinking, what can we do with this time? How can we work towards our sustainability goals? And it was kind of like a perfect opportunity to focus on a much bigger project like this that required that time and resource.
Wow, turning lemons into lemonade for sure. Was this the first of its kind? I've never read about anything like this.
Yeah, as far as we know, this is the first of this kind of system that's been implemented in a venue. The interesting thing is that it does use kind of off-the-shelf technology. So it uses heat pumps and it uses the kind of technology from geothermal storage to store that energy. So kind of putting different pieces of the puzzle together to create something new.
Wow, that's super cool. Now, you also touched on the reusable cup system that you have in place. And, for a venue of your size, I imagine there's a lot of upkeep. What is that like for SWG3?
Yeah, so our reusable cup system only kicked off in December of last year, so it's pretty new. But we've partnered with an amazing company called StatCup, who basically help us with the logistics of the system. So they've also implemented a similar system in the Hydro, which is a neighbouring venue with 14,000 capacity. So they definitely know what they're doing. And yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to communicating, again, how the system works with our visitors through social media and posters, and also making sure we have an effective cup collection system at the end of the night, so we're gathering them all back in to be reused.
So this is for everything. You go up to the bar, you order your drink, whether it's whatever, beer, cocktail, water, and then it's given to the guest in a reusable cup?
Yep, exactly.
And are you guys looking after washing it, or is it then given back to your partner that you mentioned?
StatCup will, at the end of the night, take all the cups away and wash them and return them. So, and they're locally based. So yeah, it was a really great kind of partnership.
Right. So then you're working with within the economy too for green initiatives, which is so important. Yeah. I have to tell you about the water bottle that I never leave my house without. This is the most convenient reusable water bottle. It's collapsible, so when you aren't using it, you squish it down into a little disc size and put it in your pocket, purse, fanny pack. Think about when you're traveling and you don't want to take up too much space in your luggage, or hiking and you don't want to carry around a heavy bag. This bottle is space saving, leak proof, ultra light. Then whenever you pass a water refill station, you expand it, hydrate for free, and help reduce plastic bottle pollution. My favorite place to bring it is concerts. I take it with me to every show as long as the venue allows reusable water bottles, then fill it at the concert for free. It's the best though because it's suitable with venue regulation. It's so small that it fits in your tiny bag, which is perfect since most venues only allow small bags now. Check out the Hideaway collapsible water bottle in the show notes and use the discount code PODCAST for 10% off your first purchase. What is the circular swap shop? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's another recent one. We're not just a venue at SWG3, we also have 23 artist studios on site. We kind of wanted to create a platform for our resident artists to be able to like donate and swap and sell items. So they have a lot of art supplies, books, and materials. So yeah, it's just an online platform that we've created for them to kind of be able to share things, reduce waste, and also kind of contribute to the circular economy.
It sounds like the venue is just leading in that conversation of a circular economy. What about the active travel initiative? What's that?
Our active travel initiative is a strategy that we're kind of in the process of developing to encourage our staff and audiences to travel to the venue more sustainably. So it kind of began back in 2022 when we carried out an audit of how our staff travel to the venue and what those behaviour patterns look like, and kind of asked them what would they like to see, what would encourage them to travel to the venue more sustainably. And a lot of that was to do with facilities. So this year we're getting much more cycle parking facilities installed, and also looking at ways to engage staff with cycling, such as proficiency lessons and bike maintenance workshops. And then hopefully, if the staff program is successful, we can start to expand some of these initiatives with our audiences as well.
It really sounds like you're just part of such a bigger conversation and leading in so many ways, which is just really encouraging and hopeful to see. You're on this journey to be net zero by 2050. What are the goals? Do I have that correct? 2050 still?
So 2030 is our goal. That's kind of aligned with the Glasgow City net zero target. So that's what we're aiming for.
So one of the other goals by 2030 is to be working with artists, reducing their touring emissions. Has that started yet? Have you had any artists come to you for in that aspect?
We definitely are hearing more artists coming to us and, asking what our sustainability credentials are like, what are we doing? But I think there's still a long way to go with that. One of the things that we're doing this year is we've put together a green events guide, which is being distributed to every single artist and event organizer that comes into the venue. So essentially this sets out the key areas for environmental consideration. So like waste, energy, food, production, and kind of giving them tips on ways that they can reduce their environmental impact.
How do you handle the rider situation?
Yeah, so this is kind of our first step in that. It's not something we're mandating, it's just suggestions, starting that conversation, because I think that's what needs to happen first. And then eventually we'll maybe look at including that in more of a formal rider for artists.
Have you had other clubs reach out to you and other venues reach out to you trying to follow suit?
Yeah, so we are really kind of connected with other venues in the Glasgow scene, I guess. So we work quite closely with DF Concerts, who put on a huge range of concerts and events and have their own sustainability strategy. So looking for ways to, align those things to link up with promoters and other venues and event organizers to find ways that we can collaborate on this, because I think that's what this issue needs. It needs kind of that cross-sector collaboration.
Yeah, all hands on deck. And now that you've had time to really spend in the sustainability space and see it be successful, what do you hope to see more of moving forward from, the live music industry?
Yeah, I think more artists communicating with their audiences. I think artists have such an influence. There's only so much we can do as a venue, but I think if artists are communicating these issues to their audiences, that could have a huge kind of ripple effect. So yeah, I'd love to work with more artists to see what we can do to make change in the industry.
If I ever find myself in Glasgow, SWG3 is going to be the first stop on the travel bucket list. Hannah George, thank you so much for sharing your time with Earth Care. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you.
How much harder would you dance if you knew it was supporting renewable energy? I can't get over how reassuring it is to learn that innovation like this is successfully in motion and in such a populated place. The word we keep going back to in this series is community, because that's what live music effortlessly creates. SWG3 has organically welcomed a community of 250,000 people annually who are celebrating live events while simultaneously embracing green alternatives. The BODYHEAT technology is such an ingenious creation that addresses the climate crisis without interfering with the norm. You still get to go to the concert, you still get to dance. In fact, it's encouraged. Imagine how this technology could be used not if, but when it catches on at other venues, gyms, hot yoga studios, schools, the mall during the holiday season when you trekked in from the back of the parking lot in your winter coat. If you live somewhere that gets winter, The technology hasn't made its way to Canada yet, but There are a ton of venues here in Canada, major ones too, that allow guests to bring their own reusable water bottles, which is a really simple way to take climate action. The Fans Choose to Reuse Pledge is a call to action that I launched that encourages music lovers and concert goers to bring a reusable water bottle to live music events whenever the venue allows it. If you choose to reuse, this is so great. You can prevent up to 156 plastic bottles from being discarded annually, which is important when you hear that 1 million bottles are purchased every minute. If you want to learn more about the pledge, add your name, join that community of music fans taking action. I'll include the link in the show notes. Each episode, I promise to do the research so you don't have to and tell you about more venues across the country that are cool with personal bottles. This is all based on where you want me to look though, so keep messaging me about venues and cities you're curious about. This week's message is from Luke in Edmonton, who said he saw Noah Khan at Rogers Place, but wasn't sure if he was allowed to bring his bottle. Not only are you allowed to bring a reusable water bottle there, Rogers Place is actually LEED certified, which is a green certification. And one of their other initiatives, this is so neat, ensures prepared but unserved food from events is then donated to the Edmonton Food Bank. So hey, cheers to reusing at the next concert you go to. If you've been enjoying this series so far, I invite you to leave a review, rate this podcast. This really helps get the word out about the podcast and then encourages new listeners. And if we've been learning anything about this conversation, it's that we need as many people as we can get in these climate conversations, and everyone is welcome to them. I truly do appreciate you making time for this conversation. Thank you so much for joining episode 4 of the Sustainability in the Live Music Industry series on Earth Care. I'm your host, Sarah Christie. I'll talk to you next week when actually we're taking a deep dive into that LEED certification at Canada's largest convention center.